greatness. He forged it through grit, discipline, and brilliance. 42 fights, 42 wins, 31 knockouts. A champion across multiple divisions. The first male undisputed champion of boxing's four-belt era. And now, Terence Crawford steps away from the ring. His jab was never just a punch. It was a problem opponents couldn't solve. Rounds in advance. Fight. It wasn't flash. It was calculated domination. Away from the spotlight, Crawford moves exactly how he fought. Calm, controlled, intentional. Cruising through his city in a Lamborghini Huracan, the engine humming with the same quiet menace as his counters. Then returning to a glass-walled private mansion. Sunlight spilling across marble floors. Silence replacing the roar of the crowd. A legacy secured and an empire worth over $30 million. So, before we dive into the precision, the power, and the pound-for-pound greatness of Terence Crawford, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because this isn't just boxing history. This is dominance perfected and complete. When Crawford announced his retirement, it didn't feel sudden. It felt final, like the closing scene of a story forged in struggle long before the lights ever found him. Because long before belts, before millions, before pound-for-pound debates, survival itself was the first opponent he ever had to beat. Born on September 28, 1987, in Omaha, Nebraska, Crawford grew up in a world where danger didn't knock. It lived next door. He was the only son in a household shaped by hardship, raised by a mother who believed toughness was not optional, but necessary armor. With his father serving in the U.S. Navy and rarely home, the streets became his daily test. Poverty, violence, and instability surrounded him, and the anger that followed pushed him out of classrooms and into trouble. 5 schools gave up on him. Most saw a problem child. Few saw potential. What they couldn't see was a storm waiting for direction. That direction arrived inside a modest gym in North Omaha, the CW Boxing Club. Inside those walls, chaos found structure. The fists that once swung without control began to move with intent. Coaches didn't just teach Crawford how to fight. They taught him how to think, how to channel pressure, how to survive without self-destructing. Each round shaped him. Each punch carved discipline where rage once lived. Years later, that same discipline carried him to the top of boxing's unforgiving hierarchy. World titles followed. Divisions fell. Opponents were dismantled with chilling precision. From statement knockouts to masterclass performances on boxing's biggest stages, Crawford didn't just win. He adapted, evolved, and dominated. Accolades piled up. Fighter of the Year honors. Pound-for-pound crowns. Respect that couldn't be denied. Now, as he steps away from the sport, the numbers fade into the background. What remains is the journey. From a kid nearly lost to the streets, to a man who conquered boxing on his own terms. But before he became undisputed, before the world knew his name, how did that raw fire first rise into something unstoppable? He didn't enter professional boxing with a golden resume or a spotlight waiting for him. There were no Olympic medals to introduce his name, no fast track to stardom, no machine built to turn him into a star. What he carried instead was something far more dangerous, a quiet, relentless hunger sharpened by years of fighting for survival. When he turned professional in 2008, that hunger surfaced immediately. In a small Nebraska venue, miles away from boxing's glamour cities, Crawford stepped into the ring for his pro debut. 1 round later, it was over. The message was clear. This wasn't a man looking to be developed. This was a man looking to take over. For years, Crawford fought in obscurity, stacking wins while learning the hardest lesson in the sport, that being great doesn't guarantee opportunity. Promoters hesitated. Opponents avoided him. Risk without reward became his reputation. Yet in those quiet years, something crucial was forming. He wasn't just winning. He was experimenting. Every fight became a laboratory, testing angles, switching stances seamlessly, adapting mid-round in ways even seasoned pros rarely master. Solving problems mid-fight, he learned to control chaos rather than rush through it. That patience would soon pay off. In 2013, opportunity arrived without warning and with danger attached. Breidis Prescott needed an opponent, a feared puncher, heavy-handed, the same man who had shocked the boxing world by knocking out Amir Khan in under a minute. The offer came on 3 days' notice. Wrong weight class, bigger opponent, every excuse to protect the record. Crawford accepted. Inside the ring, he showed the world what the records couldn't capture. He didn't chase Prescott. He dissected him, controlled distance, neutralized power. Over 12 rounds, he transformed a dangerous knockout artist into a frustrated shadow, winning with composure that felt unnatural for a fighter still waiting for recognition. When the final bell rang, the message landed loudly. Terence Crawford wasn't just talented, he was a problem. Momentum carried him overseas. In March 2014, he walked into hostile territory in Glasgow, Scotland, to challenge Ricky Burns for the WBO lightweight title. The crowd belonged to Burns. The moment didn't belong to Crawford. Pressure and jeers could have unseated a lesser man, but Crawford had already mastered the inner game. From the opening bell, he dictated everything, switching stances fluidly, forcing Burns into mistakes, turning angles into weapons. By the end, there was no debate. The belt left Scotland with him. Nebraska had a world champion for the first time in nearly a century. Then came the homecoming. That summer in Omaha, Crawford defended his title against Yuriorkis Gamboa, a former champion with blistering speed and explosive confidence. Early on, Gamboa made it uncomfortable. He landed clean shots, created danger, tested Crawford's balance. For a moment, doubt entered the arena. Crawford welcomed it. Round by round, he adjusted, slowed the pace, used lateral movement to nullify Gamboa's speed, found the timing, and then dismantled him systematically. 4 knockdowns followed, each louder than the last, each shaking the building as Omaha watched its own ascend from champion to force. When the fight ended in the 9th, Crawford didn't just keep a belt. He claimed ownership of the moment. But comfort was never his destination. In 2015, he made a defining choice. He moved up to light welterweight, chasing greatness instead of security. Bigger men waited, harder punches, fewer excuses. Against Thomas Delorme, Crawford announced his arrival violently, dismantling him to claim the vacant WBO title. The division quickly realized this wasn't a visitor, it was an invasion. What followed wasn't a title reign. It was a purge. Deary Jean, John Molina Jr., Victor Postal. Each arrived with confidence. Each left exposed. The Postal fight in 2016 was pivotal. Undefeated. Champion. Many believed this was where Crawford's ceiling would reveal itself. Instead, he dropped Postal twice and dominated every round, showcasing a level of control that silenced any remaining doubts. August 2017 changed everything. Julius Indongo stood across from him, undefeated, holding the remaining belts. For titles, 1 fight, undisputed, a word rarely realized in boxing. Crawford needed just 3 rounds. A brutal body shot ended it instantly. History was no longer theoretical. He was undisputed, the first American in decades to unify the division. Rare air. Still, he climbed. Welterweight awaited, boxing's most unforgiving division. His debut came against Jeff Horn, the rugged Australian who had shocked Manny Pacquiao. Horn was supposed to be too big, too rough, too relentless. Crawford dismantled him. By the 9th round, it was over. 3 divisions. No debate. Then came the years of frustration. Despite dominance, the biggest fights stayed elusive. Risk without reward followed him. Crawford kept winning anyway. Jose Benavidez Jr. was broken down. Amir Khan, lightning fast and elusive, quit on his stool after Crawford's strategic dismantling. Egidijus Kavaliauskas was dropped and finished. Kell Brook was knocked out clean. Each performance sharpened the same truth. Crawford wasn't just beating opponents, he was solving them. Using angles, timing, and clever adjustments, he neutralized speed and power that had toppled lesser men. Sean Porter tested that theory. Porter was pressure personified, the man nobody stopped. Crawford stayed patient. Then, in the 10th, he flipped the switch. 2 knockdowns. A towel thrown. Myth erased. Still, the world demanded one final answer. July 2023. Las Vegas. Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. Two undefeated kings. One truth. Pound for pound brilliance on display. A once-in-a-generation collision. From the opening bell, Crawford controlled everything. Timing, distance, violence. Spence was dropped early, broken late, and stopped in the ninth. Undisputed again, this time at welterweight. No man had ever done it twice. And still he climbed. In 2024, at 36, he moved to light middleweight to face Israel Madrimov. Younger, dangerous, undefeated. 12 rounds later, Crawford stood victorious again. For divisions conquered. Before the world demanded one final answer, Crawford faced another titan, Canelo Alvarez. A fighter younger, faster, and celebrated worldwide. Canelo carried the weight of legacy and expectation. Crawford studied every rhythm, every feint, every movement, exploiting angles and neutralizing Canelo's power with surgical precision. By the championship rounds, it was undeniable. Crawford had outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and outclassed one of boxing's best. The victory wasn't just another belt. It was proof that he could dominate across generations, cementing his status as one of the era's all-time greats. By the time retirement was announced, the debates were over. Every milestone, every unification, every strategic masterclass cemented a legacy few in the sport will ever approach. Only one question remained. When a fighter has climbed this high, what does life look like after the final bell? For Terence "Bud" Crawford, success isn't shouted from yachts or ostentatious mansions. It's quiet, deliberate, and built to last. Across Nebraska, Colorado, and Missouri, he quietly owns more than 100 properties. Investments that speak of discipline, foresight, and control. With a net worth estimated at $30 million, he has transformed his fighting discipline into financial power, proving that mastery isn't limited to the ring. Every brick, every apartment, every plot of land is another reminder that dominance isn't just measured in belts. It's measured in legacy. Step into Omaha, and the scene feels almost ordinary. Blue shutters frame the windows. A fenced backyard hums with children's laughter. This is where the world champion becomes a father, a neighbor, just a man rooted in his beginnings. Here, success isn't flashy. It's grounded, practical, and lived. Yet just a few hundred miles away in Colorado Springs, everything shifts. Marble floors gleam under high ceilings. Sweeping mountain views stretch beyond the horizon. Here, the calm is deceptive. In the thin air of the Rockies, Crawford becomes a predator, lungs burning, muscles sharpening, preparing for the next war before it even begins. And then there's the garage, a reflection of the fighter himself. The Mercedes MGG 63, boxy, unshakable, $145,000 of raw authority, sits ready for anything. Beside it, the Dodge Challenger SRT Hellcat snarls with nearly 800 horsepower, a machine as aggressive and explosive as Crawford's counters in the ring. The Corvette Stingray crouches low, built for precision and speed, a mirror of his surgical punch combinations. Trucks like the GMC Sierra and the Hummer H2, rugged, dirt-tested, and unapologetically bold, remind him and anyone watching that the Nebraska grit that carried him from the streets is still alive. Classics linger too, whispers of old-school muscle that nod to a history of fighters who built legacies through sweat and steel, not flashy hashtags. Luxury, however, is not absent. Crawford adorns himself with gold chains engraved with his initials, diamond watches that catch the arena lights, and custom pieces that tell a story only those who earned it could understand. Even a $317,000 robbery could not diminish the symbolism of these items, each one a marker of precision, discipline, and identity. And when Crawford travels, it is quietly strategic. Private jets for fight promotions, a team surrounding him, the hum of engines underscoring the calm before another storm. Every flight is a mission, every landing the start of a new conquest. For Crawford, lifestyle is meaning, not vanity. Each home, each car, each chain Each property signals a man who fought to carve his place, who built empires as carefully as he built combinations in the ring. Behind the gloves, beyond the cheers, beyond the flash of cameras and the glare of spotlights, his true world exists in quiet moments, the ones that no highlight reel can capture. At the center of that world is Alindra Person, the woman he met in the early 2000s. She wasn't a spectator to his journey. She was its anchor. Through every climb, every stumble, every defining fight, she has stood beside him, a steadying presence in the chaos of a life built on risk and precision. Together, they've raised 6 children, a bustling, joyful household that reminds Crawford of what really matters when the belts are packed away. Their laughter echoes through the halls of Omaha, a counterpoint to the roar of arenas, a reminder that the man who bends the sport to his will is also a father, a partner, and a man who values roots as much as rings. Beyond them, he also nurtures a child from a previous relationship, weaving a life that is larger than boxing, larger than legacy, a life of responsibility and quiet pride. In the ring, he conquers opponents. At home, he conquers time, attention, and love. But how does a man who has mastered both worlds carry the weight of legacy into the next chapter of his life? Outside the ring, he's not just a fighter. He's a strategist, an architect of his own empire, a man turning discipline into lasting impact. The same focus that once carved openings in opponents' defenses now shapes contracts, investments, and the communities he calls home. Yet money is only one measure of success. Philanthropy shapes another dimension of his life. In Omaha, the city that raised him and watched him rise, Crawford gives back in ways that are meaningful rather than performative. He supports youth programs, mentors aspiring boxers, and invests in community initiatives aimed at providing opportunities that he himself had to fight for. From funding local gyms to contributing to scholarship programs, his goal is clear: to create a path for others that once didn't exist, to ensure the next generation doesn't have to battle alone. Even his business ventures echo his fighter's precision. Gym ownership, branding, and management of his personal training programs reflect the same discipline he brought to every sparring session and title bout. Crawford's philosophy is simple. Mastery is not limited to the ring. It extends to every aspect of life, every decision, every move. Through business acumen and charitable efforts, he has transformed his personal discipline into collective empowerment, leaving footprints not just on boxing history, but across communities and industries. In every property he owns, every young life he touches, and every project he nurtures, his influence grows quietly, but unmistakably. When Terence "Bud" Crawford announced his retirement, it wasn't a shock. It was the quiet punctuation mark at the end of a sentence written in sweat, strategy, and unyielding excellence. Few fighters leave the sport undefeated, across 4 weight divisions, holding the respect of peers and fans alike. Fewer still do it while redefining what it means to dominate, adapt, and inspire. His record speaks for itself: 42 fights, 42 wins, 31 knockouts, perfection without debate. He claimed titles in lightweight, light welterweight, and light middleweight, becoming the first male fighter in history to achieve undisputed status in 2 divisions and the only one to retire undefeated across 4. Along the way, he delivered knockout moments that became part of boxing's lore. The body shot that floored Julius Indongo, the precision dismantling of Errol Spence Jr., the patient annihilation of Sean Porter. Every punch wasn't just a mark on a scoreboard. It was a statement, a lesson, a declaration that mastery in boxing could be both art and science. Beyond the numbers, his legacy is defined by adaptability. A master of stance switching, timing, and counterpunching, he turned what many saw as simple skill into a weapon feared by the best in the world. He wasn't the flashiest fighter in the ring, nor the loudest in interviews, but he was arguably the most complete. Opponents who underestimated him learned the hard way. He could read, react, and rewrite the script mid-fight, leaving no margin for error. His discipline, focus, and calculated choices, once reserved for the ring, now ripple through generations of fighters and fans alike. In every list of pound-for-pound greats, his name will appear. In every conversation about precision, adaptability, and dominance, his story will be told. Terence Crawford retires not just as a champion, but as a blueprint for what greatness looks like. Undefeated, respected, and unwavering. His punches have stopped fights, but his legacy will stop arguments. His name isn't just etched on belts, it's carved into the history of boxing itself. Before you go, if you want to support the channel and be part of what we're building, consider becoming a channel member through the link in the description. Members get early access to new videos, the chance to suggest future topics, and exclusive behind-the-scenes content. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for more long-form boxing documentaries like this one. And when you're ready, check out our deep dive into Canelo Alvarez, another career shaped by dominance, discipline, and legacy. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next chapter.